Hello everyone, welcome back. So we're gonna have some very odd lighting for the next little bit because my ring light broke. Not the actual light, the light is still good, I'm using it right now. However, the little claw doohickey that holds the cell phone so that I can record myself, that part broke. Part of the plastic actually friggin' broke off. And I've had this thing for like less than 6 months, so that does not speak well of the quality of the product. But I really just don't have the money to get a new one right now. I had some money set aside just for in case of like a little emergency, like I had like 50-60 bucks set aside for in case of like some minor emergency, and child needed new shoes. Child finally outgrew the shoes and had to get new ones, and shoes are not cheap anymore. And yeah, so it's gonna be another couple paychecks or so before I get another ring light. So I'm actually using my old tripod that's like this little bitty thing. I have it stacked on a chair, and then ironically the shoebox that child's shoes came in, and the ring light's behind it, so it's got weird lighting, and I'm sorry, but it is what it is. That being said, let's get into the story that we are reviewing today, and that is Jewels of the Sun by Nora Roberts. And the funny thing here is that one of my buddies from work, Grace, she's actually looking forward to the series because apparently I got her into the Three Sisters trilogies back in Hontober. I let her borrow them. And so now that she knows what Nora Roberts can do as an author, she's kind of looking forward to this. And then she's getting these books after the reviews. So be looking forward to that, Grace. Anyways, there really are no trigger warnings for this story, by the way. There's no major trauma that occurs. There's no major loss outside of the realm of like referencing her divorce, and then referencing like there is like one or two like little brawl scenes in the bar is no worse than what you would see on like a TV show, probably more like a sitcom. And let's get into the story. So, this is the story of Jude Murray and Aidan Gallagher. Jude Murray is a professor of psychology at a university in the United States. She has, within the last few years, gone through a divorce, really less than a year after being married, when her husband decided to move on to greener pastures, and I can misrate with that. And so through the few years since her divorce, she really never gave herself the opportunity to get past what happened and heal and kind of deal with it. She's just kind of continued on with life as though nothing changed, even though a lot changed. And it's starting to wear on her. It's starting to really sink in and really set heavy on her to the point where she kind of feels like she's on the brink of having something of a mental breakdown, and she doesn't want to be around her friends and family when that happens. So she basically quits her job, does not take a leave of absence, she freaking quits, and decides she's going to go move in at her great aunt's home in Ireland. Her great aunt Maud had passed away previously. Her grandmother, who was Maud's cousin, basically gave her permission to go live in the cottage in Ireland for as long as she needs. And she basically told everybody, oh, I'm going to go compile stories and mythology so I can write a book about, Irish mythology and how it intertwines with psychology and things like that. And far as I can tell, she did intend to do that, and she did write it. But it was kind of like a cover story, like I'm gonna do it, but it's not really the big reason why I'm going. I can do it from anywhere, essentially. But she's really going because she doesn't want to be home when she breaks down. She doesn't want to worry her family, her parents, which is understandable, I think. And if you have the means to do it, by all means do it, So she goes to live in her great-grandmother's cousin's cottage in Ireland, and this is where she meets Aidan Gallagher and his siblings Darcy Gallagher and Sean Gallagher. And she meets some new friends in Ireland. And Aidan obviously is attracted to Jude from the very beginning. He finds her an interesting mix of cool and sophisticated, but also shy and timid. And he happens to know many of the local stories and myths. So he volunteers to help her with learning some of the local variations of these stories. And it's as they are getting to know each other through these stories that they kind of start to fall for each other. Now, what makes this trilogy a trilogy is not just the fact that it's around the 3 Gallagher siblings, but also how it intertwines with one of the stories. So the first story that Aidan tells Jude is about Lady Gwen and Prince Carrick. Garrick? I want to say Carrick. I'm pretty sure it's Carrick. Lady Gwen was a woman. She was not an actual noble lady. She was a normal townsperson. She grew up without a mother, so it was basically just her and her father. And one day when she was out taking flowers to her mother's grave, the Prince of the Fairies, who lived in a fairy palace under her home in the hill, was there, and they fell in love with each other on sight. Her father, fearing that she was under a spell of some form, basically betrothed her to another man. The prince went 3 different times to try and dissuade her. First time he went to the sun, took the rays of the sun, they became diamonds in his pouch, and he brought them to her, telling her, "These are my passion for you." Second time he went to the moon, they turned to pearls. And he said, "These are tears of the moon." And then later, when she was an older woman who was a grandmother, he went to the heart of the ocean, which became sapphires, which he brought to her. And by that point, the wisdom of age, Gwen was able to realize that every time he brought her these gifts, it was really him telling her he loved her. And that because she had been too unable to see that that's what the action was, she overlooked the fact that it was his love for her. And so she turned from him and did her duty and married the man her father had wanted her to marry and had a family with him. And then she basically said, "It's too late, I'm too old. If you'd simply told me that you loved me, I might have put duty aside to be with you." And of course, being a fairy prince, Carrick does not take this very well and casts a spell or a curse upon them. And I'm going to read a little bit of it. "She would wander and she would wait, as he had year after year, alone and lonely, until true hearts met and accepted the gifts he had offered her. 3 times to meet, 3 times to accept before the spell could be broken." So basically, they have to wait for 3 couples to fall in love before they can be reunited and be together. So now one would think, oh, it's just a story. No, it's not. Because guess who's haunting Jude's cottage? Lady Gwen. And on multiple occasions, when Jude goes to visit Old Maud, or when Aidan has gone to visit Old Maud, there is a man there who, interestingly enough, matches the description of Prince Carrick. And it becomes pretty obvious that he is actually the fairy prince. And he believes that they are to be the first couple of this prophecy, curse, whatever you want to call it. And he's getting pretty jittery and excited because he's thinking, finally, after all these years, I'm going to finally be with the woman I love. So And of course, this is going to cause some other questions like, do we really have feelings for each other? Is this just remnants from the spell? Are we going a little loony because we're starting to think we're seeing these characters all over the place? All that kind of stuff. Now, one of the things that has been a critique in previous stories with Nora Roberts is that a lack of character development. Like with the Three Sisters trilogy, I felt like there was a lack of character development on behalf of Sheriff Todd. There's plenty of character development for Nell and the other women of the trio, but that the other half of the romance was underdeveloped. That doesn't happen here. Because there is a lack of major turmoil, you know, there's no abductions, there's no like crazy ex coming to stir up all sorts of drama. It is quite literally just the story of Jude, Aiden, the Fairy Prince, and Lady Gwen. You do get character developments of the other characters that are going to come up in other books because they are all friends or related to each other. But because in the first story you do not have a major event, all of that goes into character development and story development. So I feel it's a much better served story than the first book of the Three Sisters trilogy. I figured for one of the first handfuls of stories for 2021, a nice fairy tale story would be a good way to go. I think if you like fairy tales, if you like modern fairy tales, if you like just nice, relatively clean-cut romance that doesn't have a whole lot of darkness to it, this is going to be a good way to go. It's pretty lighthearted. It's there is some depth to it because, again, she is getting over a divorce. There is a point when she finds out her ex-husband is getting married again, and she kind of, you know, gets thrown for a loop from that. But other than that, for the most part, it's pretty lighthearted. It's pretty fun. It's easygoing. And it's one that I would definitely recommend to almost anyone. Because there isn't a whole lot of controversy to it. There isn't a whole lot of triggering things to it. It's a good story. It's well done. It's well thought out. The characters are fleshed out really well. And I mean, who doesn't like a modern day fairy prince? So overall, I'm going to give this story, because of the fact that it isn't like anything super crazy out there, it's not anything that's going to really like make you question certain aspects of life and certain qualities of relationships and loves and things. Again, it's a very straightforward story. You could see this as like a made-for-TV movie or like a little side story on a sitcom or something. I would give this one a good solid 3.5 out of 5 stars. It's enjoyable. You'll probably come back to it if you read it and liked it. It's not going to be earth-shattering. It's a nice story. So I hope you enjoyed this review. I hope you found it insightful if you are on the fence as to whether or not you would like to read this book. I think it's super fun. I don't know what the next story is going to be. It's either going to be the next of the West Impact series or the next in the Hades Hangman series. And then this will come up probably in another week or so. The sequel to this one will probably come up in another week or so. So that being said, I look forward to seeing you all at the next review. Have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.